Hey guys, check this out. We are here with the all-new Mitsubishi Triton. Very, very exciting. In fact, so exciting, I turned down going to the Land Cruiser launch, which is also very exciting. So make sure you subscribe for that because that's coming soon. But anyway, we're here with the pre-production Mitsubishi Triton. This thing is huge because right now it is Australia's #3 seller, even though the current generation is based on a car from like early 2000s. So everything with this thing is new. Everything, including the engine, we're being told is all new. And in a lot of ways it is. It now puts out so much more power, so much more torque. You have a brand new interior that's really nice. Whole new exterior, beast mode styling, which is still a dumb name, but anyway. However, prices have gone up. They've jumped up almost 7 grand for at least some of the grades. This one here, the GSR, top of the range, will set you back just under 64 grand before on roads, which to be fair is still 11 grand cheaper than a Ford Ranger Wildtrak. So pretty huge numbers there. Today I'm going to take you for a full review of the new Mitsubishi Triton. We're going to check out the exterior, the interior. We're also going to see just how well this thing performs on one of the most difficult off-road terrains, which is sand. We're going to see, does that engine make a difference? Because I'm not only driving this, I'm driving the previous Triton back to back to see, is there any difference? And then I'll end on my final thoughts and whether you should be excited for the new Mitsubishi Triton. Is it actually a competitor to a Ford Ranger or Toyota HiLux, which is what Mitsubishi are going for? All right, let's get into it. As always, we're going to start with the exterior design, beast mode. Beast mode, as Mitsubishi calls it. Dumb. Anyway, let's talk about the dimensions really quickly. So it's 5,320 millimeters long, which is up 15 millimeters. It's 1,865 millimeters wide, which is up 50 millimeters. 1,795 millimeters tall, which is actually the same. And its wheelbase has been extended by 130 millimeters to 3,130 millimeters. And honestly, when you're in person with it, you can tell the difference. It is wider, it is bigger, it is meaner, and that's essentially what people want. In fact, what you guys want today are American styling, apparently, so you get quite a lot of influence for that. You can see here that you've got the split headlight design, which is very Mitsubishi. It's good to see. You've got nice daytime running lights up there, pretty bright LEDs there too. You have Mitsubishi embossed into the grille. I really like that. And a nice looking grille here. Obviously, this is in some Japanese worded orange paint. It looks fantastic. It's like orangey yellow, really, really cool in person, but it is the GSR, so top of the range there again. You've also got a radar here, so this does have radar cruise control, but it doesn't have lane centering, at least not for now, which is definitely head scratching for me. Of course, we can't test it out anyway, but it means that this thing won't steer itself in a highway setting, which pretty much every new car comes with. So yeah, that one's a bit curious for me, but otherwise, very, very good design. Let's all go outside. Okay, so coming to the side of the GSR now, one of the big things for it is that it's all blacked out. So everything's blacked out. You got these blacked out 18-inch wheels here. Obviously, they're a bit deflated because we're off-roading today, but they come in Bravo all-terrain tires. That spec could change when this thing does go on sale in February of next year. So again, make sure you subscribe so you see when that launch happens. Square is clearly the shape of the day because the whole thing is really, really square. Blacked out mirror caps with a 360 camera there. Obviously, it says pre-production vehicle here. Not everything in this car is, let's say, the perfect fit and finish, but it's actually pretty good, as you'll see. You've also got some nice side steps, keyless entry and go, tinted privacy glass, which you don't often see, especially even at this price point. Up here, you've also got some nice roof rails. This is different and different in a very good way. One of the issues with the old MR that's just gone off sale Triton is that the tray just kept kind of getting extended back and back and back. So, you know, if you loaded things up too far in the back, you could have a really, really bad time. But because they've extended out the wheelbase and they've kind of brought the tub forward, even though you get more space in there, as you'll see in a second, it's actually a better situation. So yeah, big change, especially good if you're carrying loads in the back with its new 1-ton payload. Massive. You've also got a sail plane here, which is unique for the GSR. All right, let's check out the back. Alrighty, so coming to the bum of the Mitsubishi Triton, what's different? Well, you're gonna notice these just ginormous taillights. They're huge. You've got a cool 3D effect to them, but they do have halogen bulbs. Mitsubishi, it ain't that expensive, okay? Put LEDs in there, especially for your top spec. Numbnuts. Triton badge there, you've got a Mitsubishi badge there. GSR badge with some weird fake carbon fiber, but that's okay. Also, 3.5-ton towing. One of the biggest things about the Triton is that they're moving away from being a value play. They don't want to be the cheap ute, especially because they can't be. Think of the GWM Cannon that we recently reviewed. That's a cheap ute. This, however, at 64 grand is not cheap, but it's still 10 grand cheaper. So it's a bit of more of a value play in a sense, but they're trying to go for the throat of the Ford Ranger and the Toyota HiLux. You should buy one of these over one of those is what they think. So now you have 3.5 ton towing amongst the 1 ton payload, amongst this as well. So we open this up. No torsion bar, so it's bloody heavy. But anyway, on the inside, you'll see a bed liner. You won't see a tonneau cover, but you will see more room. So not only is this thing wider, it's actually 35 millimeters longer for the tub. So it's actually a much more usable space, and you can fit a Euro pallet in the back. And as always, if you want to read more about the detailed specs, head to our website, CarSauce.com. We have our full initial review up live now, and we also do daily news. It's a great website, CarSauce.com. All right, let's check out the interior. All right, so coming into the interior now of the Mitsubishi Triton, it is a world of difference. Seriously, you cover that up and you think you're in driver monitoring system, you silly Anyway, you come in here, it is incredibly different. I'll put some B-roll now of the old Triton, and here's the new one. Yeah, night and day. Of course, this is top of the range, but it really doesn't get much worse lower down. You touch around in a lot of places, nice soft touch materials, other places scratchy, hard stuff, and you might be like, well, I don't touch my dashboard. Yeah, you don't need to, it still reflects sound, idiot. Anyway, heaps of space too. Storage galore. You've got a split glove box. You've also got cup holders in the dash, which is very every other ute, but I love to see it. Great feature. Still got a couple there too. You've got a new infotainment display, which, no, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but it is so much better than what you had before. It's like a supercomputer. You've also got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is great to see. You've got your air conditioning controls here. It's a digi analog setup, which is like the best implementation. You've got a USB-A and USB-C port. You can also lock your rear differential. In fact, this thing still has the Super Select 2 four-wheel driving, which means you can drive this thing as a four-wheel drive on road because it has a trick system with its center locking diff. So yeah, it's got a center and a rear locking differential. Really, really cool system, and definitely a huge advantage for the Triton over pretty much all of its competitors, unless of course you go for the new V6 Ranger. The steering wheel, again, it just is a huge modern uptick, including this disgustingly huge driver monitoring system in front. Like, it actually blocks part of the new digital instrument cluster, which just seems silly. It does have all of the latest safety technology, except for one big thing, which is lane centering. It doesn't come with that, so this won't steer you down a lane. It's got, you know, lane keep assist or lane departure warning, but in my books, that's really not good enough in 2024 of all times. But as I said, you do get a new display up in front of you, which, I mean, the last one, to say that thing had a digital display would be frankly just a joke. And it shows plenty of information up in front of you as well. Other thing too, seats, they're pretty standard, but hey, they work well. They're nice and comfy, so I like that a lot. Other things to mention is a wireless charger. Welcome to the new age Triton, and also carbon fiber, because I don't know, one of the weirder choices out there. Still, interior, massive upgrade for the new Triton, and yeah, this is extremely competitive, and frankly, I'm happy to see it. Let's check out the back seats. Okay, so coming to the back seats now of the Triton, I'm happy to say that it's actually really good back here. In fact, it's probably class leading in terms of space. I mean, I'm 5'11". I've got so much leg room, it's pretty funny. Toe room, not the best, but headroom is phenomenal too. In a Ranger or HiLux, I can hardly fit behind myself, so really good to see. Map pocket there, and a dual split map pocket up there, which is pretty cool. You've also got your air vents here, which looks to be a little bit of a carryover from the previous Triton, but I'm not complaining because they're really easy to use, and I don't know, I like them quite a lot. You've got a USB-C port, a USB-A port, so your kids are gonna be happy. Other thing as well, apart from the seats in the back being really nice leather, pull that down and you've got a couple of cup holders. I don't know, this is just such a huge upgrade on the interior specifically that it's hard to even think that this is anything like the same Triton before. It is entirely different, and I can't wait to get this thing on, you know, paved roads to see how it all comes together for the day-to-day driving. However, I can drive it off roads and tell you all about that new engine and drivetrain, really, so let's talk about that. Okay, so we're about to drive the new Triton, which is really exciting. I've been wanting to drive this so much because the last one, it just left a lot to be desired, and they've changed a lot. We'll talk about that in a second, but first, let's put this car into 4 high with the diff in the center locked. LC, locked center, is what I think that really means. But essentially that means we are in 4 high and the proper 4 high. If we just had it in 4H, it means that we can use use it on road, essentially. But the diff in the center, it ain't locked. I think we have to be rolling a little bit for it to engage. Come on, my dude. Okay, so it stopped flashing. We are now engaged. Not in that way, you weirdos. We've also got 7 drive modes. So mud and sand or something used to be connected to each other, and now they're separate. So let's put this into sand mode and take it off-road. Now, the biggest changes for this thing, I mean, there are so many. First of all, brand new frame underneath this thing. Gone is the early 2000s Mitsubishi Triton frame. We now have an all-new frame that is like 40 to 60% stiffer in different ways, and it does make a difference. Even behind the wheel, we've been driving this back to back with the old Triton. I can tell you it's a massive difference already. You've also got a new double wishbone front suspension. And by the way, this thing has an Aussie tune on it, and we got to speak to the engineer in charge, and he honestly has done a phenomenal job, because honestly, the suspension, it just already feels so much less stiff than before. It's really compliant, it's really comfortable. Even off-road here with bumps, you hardly feel them. By the way, to save weight on this thing, they have also reduced the rear leaf suspension from 4 to 5 leaves, I guess you would call them, bars, something like that. They've changed it now to 3 to 4, and it goes down to standard duty suspension, which is what the GLS and the GSR have, which are the 2 top specs. They both have the standard duty 3 leaf spring suspension. Steering as well, such a huge difference, because now it doesn't use hydraulic steering, it uses electronic steering, which was a challenge for them, right? Because it can be really hard to get it correct. But it's gone from 3.7 turns to 3.3, and again, it just feels so linear. We can't not talk about this engine, because as you guys know, I did a little piece earlier, a little piece to camera, and I'll link that video down below, but essentially talking about the new Triton and its on paper specs, and I was really skeptical. In fact, in my mind, I just thought, well, what are they doing? They're strapping a second turbo on and calling it a day, because it's the same 2.4 liter engine that used to have a single turbo, and now it's got a 2 turbo setup in a sequential order. And that means that you get a turbo for low RPMs and a turbo for high RPMs. Sorry. Ruining other people's shots. And let me tell you, you put your foot down, this thing feels night and day difference already, and we haven't even taken it on the road, because these are pre-productions. Legally, we can't. But you just stab the throttle and you can feel the torque immediately. It still uses the same 6-speed Aisin-sourced torque converter automatic transmission with a manual coming, apparently, although we don't know what that will be for, to be honest. But even here, right, you just stab the pedal, you can see the RPMs there. It's like instant torque. It's very different to the previous Triton of old, which, by the way, when you're driving it through this exact section, it bounces around everywhere. Again, night and day difference. And by the way, it's not just the addition of a second turbo that makes this engine different. In fact, pretty much everything Mitsubishi tells us is entirely different, down to the conrods are a longer conrod. It's also apparently more fuel efficient, 7.7 liters per 100 kilometers, though we'll have to test that when we actually can on roads. It's never that good. But more importantly with the engine, and I can't believe I've already forgotten to mention this, it puts out way more power and torque. So we've gone from 132 kilowatt of power to 150, which competes now with the 2-liter bi-turbo 4-cylinder from Ford, and of course the HiLux's 2.8-liter turbo diesel. And torque isn't quite as good as those at 470, but again, it's the delivery. It just delivers it so much lower than pretty much both of those engines. Now this part is a bit sketchy, so let's make sure we don't lose it and we don't total one of these 2 pre-production cars. Yeah, a really big advantage for this thing is going to be its Australian tune, because when companies don't do that, aka HiLux, they can really suffer. This thing is a real hoot to drive. Even on the sand, it doesn't really lose traction. I'm going pretty fast right now. We're doing pretty well, surprisingly. I'm at the bloody wheel. And I'll put the approach, ramp over, and departure angles up on the screen now, but it's quite similar to before, even though this thing does have a shorter overhang on the rear, just because the floor has actually been lowered, so it's better for backseat passengers for sure. That does unfortunately mean that it's not class leading in terms of its off-road credentials, but it's still really good straight from the factory, quite clearly. I mean, this is a technical course and it's doing fine. If I give it some sauce here, Honestly, it just feels so different to before. So different. And I think it needed it. If it wanted to compete with the Ford Ranger and Hilux, like, that's unreal. On completely loose sand that I'm able to do that, and it's holding traction really well with its four-wheel drive system and of course its electronic control systems. I'm not hearing ABS kick in. I'm not hearing an overly intrusive electronic stability control kick in. It's just handling it so well. Well, there it was. But still, yeah, very impressive. I can't wait to drive this thing on road, guys. Like, I'm telling you, it's so much better. It's so much better. And with that, quite a lot of praise actually, let's get into our final thoughts on this thing. Alrighty, so final thoughts on the all-new Mitsubishi Triton, at least preliminary final thoughts, because the full launch happening in February. Honestly, this thing is really exciting. It is just so different from the Triton before. It does look almost quite similar, you know, cover up the badge. You can tell that this is a Mitsubishi Triton, but under the skin, this is entirely different. It no longer feels like you're compromising, but you're still getting a car that's really quite a lot cheaper than a Ford Ranger and a Toyota HiLux. So yeah, you should absolutely be excited for that, and make sure you subscribe down below so you can see as soon as we get to drive this thing on Australian roads and see just how well that Aussie tuning goes on road. Ciao for now.